Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And John, thank you for sharing your movie with us. It's beautiful. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for being here. Amazing panelists. My name is Stacey Wilson-Hunt. I'm a contributing editor at The Hollywood Reporter and a friend of Jill Lederman, which is a really good place to be. Thank you, Jill, for having me. I see her smiling up there. Thank you so much for trusting me with this. So let's get started with our introductions. To my left, she is a gun violence survivor and the founding member of Team Enough, Eastmond. Aalayah, yes, you can clap. Hello? Okay, here we go. He is a writer and producer of such series as 12 Monkeys, Mayans MC, and Star Trek Picard, Sean Tretta. Thank you, Sean. Hello? Okay, sorry, this is Mike. She is the president of Brady, Kris Brown. Thank you, Kris. He is a television writer, showrunner, and producer on such series as The Shield, The Walking Dead, and The Rookie, and also has served on the WGA's Inclusion and Equity Group Board for 13 years, Glen, Mazzara. And finally, she is a TV writer and producer known for her work on Lost, Falling Skies, Vampire Diaries, and Nancy Drew, Melinda Hsu. Firstly, I'd like to know what you thought of the film. How did it make you feel?
I mean, it's incredibly humbling sitting up here after hearing Fred's stories again and seeing that film. It's just a reminder how the impact that gun violence has on people and how deeply it cuts into your psyche and your soul.
And the impact on community. It's really remarkable. Aalayah, you are quite a superstar. I'm so honored to be sitting next to you and using your voice as a Parkland survivor to both educate and inspire change. It is truly remarkable. Thank you for being here. How would you describe your life since the events of February 2018? How are you doing?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Aalayah. I just want to give like a quick introduction of who I am. My name is Aalayah Eastmond. I'm a survivor of the 2018 shooting in Parkland, Florida. I was in the third classroom that the perpetrator attacked. He unfortunately shot 6 of my classmates and murdered 2 in my classroom. So that really fueled my passion for this issue and why I stand up against gun violence. How I'm doing since then, I've done a lot. I've co-founded Team Enough with the thanks of Brady. I've also been able to testify before Congress multiple times. I've organized across the country, and I've also met with a lot of young people that are also survivors of gun violence, but with a deep focus on Black and brown communities, because we know those are the communities that are dealing with this violence disproportionately and that are not often depicted on film. So I try to make sure that I'm being intersectional in this issue, and it's also important to me because I lost my uncle to gun violence in Brooklyn, New York when I was a little girl. So I've been impacted by this issue in 2 different ways, the mass shooting, school shooting perspective, and also the inner city violence. So I have a very unique perspective of this issue, and I try my best to bring all of those perspectives to the conversation. But now I just graduated college in May. I feel like that's
Congratulations.
so long ago. Thank you.
You had time to do all of that and go to school. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was not easy. It was not easy. A lot of going back and forth with professors about like not being in class, but
you had good reasons for not being in class. Yeah.
But yeah, I graduated college. I'm in DC. I'm doing a lot of work with Brady and Team Enough, and also a lot of grassroots organizations that are based in DC that focus on amplifying Black and brown voices. So that's been a lot of my journey since then. But it definitely hasn't been easy, especially leaving Parkland and going to a new state. You know, it's not easy finding a therapist, especially a therapist that takes your insurance. And those are things that like people don't know that survivors have to deal with afterwards. So it's definitely not easy.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's really important. So you bring up the importance of the intersectionality of this issue, and you're right, we don't talk enough about that. So your perspective, not only as a young person, but a Black woman in America, Tell me what Shogun safety means to you now and to your peers, and the impact that you think it can make on people growing up in your generation who can actually effect change as well.
Absolutely. I think that's an awesome question. I think at the end of the day, we all know that film is very influential. You know, we all watch film, especially our young people. They saturate themselves in that stuff. And I think it's really important that if we're going to have firearm usage in films, we need to also show the safety side of it. So it's okay to have a gun in a film, but make sure that you're showing that, you know, you have to have safe storage as well. And we don't see that in film at all really now. So it's really important to push that forward and make sure that we're holding filmmakers and producers accountable to include that in their filmmaking as well. And for young people, I think that's something that we don't necessarily think about because we've never seen that representation in film.
We're so numb to it as well.
Yeah, and we've never seen that representation ever. So Brady actually brought this issue to my attention. I never considered the impact of film and culture into the issue of gun violence, and they really opened that door up for me to really understand and realize that that is also a big part of this movement. So that's my thoughts.
I love that. And as if you aren't impressive enough, share with us what you shared with me earlier about your plans for your career.
Okay. So right now I'm in my gap year, and I plan to go to law school soon. So please wish me luck on the LSAT. And in the future, I plan to be a criminal defense attorney in hopes of opening my own law firm that specializes in criminal defense for Black and brown families.
Thank you. You're really an amazing person. Thank you so much. Sean, thank you for being here. It's so honored to have you on the panel. You and your family became members of this community in the wake of a November 2019 mass shooting in Santa Clarita, in which your 15-year-old daughter, Mia, was shot. She miraculously survived. And how is Mia doing today?
She's doing fantastic. She's a freshman at Brown.
Amazing.
And along with her continued advocacy she does with many groups, Brady being one of them, she's also now an employee of the ATF. And so she spent her summer, a bit to her chagrin, but she spent her summer interning for the director of the ATF in Washington, D.C. And one of her goals was, after this incident happened to her and she got really involved in advocacy, she noticed that there wasn't always an effective bridge between advocacy and law enforcement agencies. So we had the fortune of meeting Director Dettelbeck when Mia got the opportunity to speak at the White House. So this just became a natural transition of how can she go take what she's learned in the advocacy world and find out what their needs are and how we work together, because we absolutely need to.
I'm so glad she's doing well. These two should partner. They're formidable.
They know each other.
Are you friends? Okay, I assume you probably... She's part of Team Enough.
Part of Team Enough.
Incredible. I'm so glad she's doing well. So this experience, obviously, it's probably, there are no words that can really suffice, but in what distinct ways has living through this impacted the stories that you want to tell and the way you want to tell them, in terms of even your granular writing process, when you're pitching ideas, when you're formulating your next idea? Where is this entering into your psyche?
I mean, it changes everything. The incident where Mia was shot, it's a nightmare. And I found myself, we'd gone to the hospital with her and we were there, and I found myself in this alone moment. And the relief is she's alive, and she's gonna be alive. And you feel lucky, and that's not necessarily a great feeling. And in that exact moment, I got a text from the father of one of her friends who didn't survive, and it broke me. It broke me to my core. And I think for our whole family, and my wife's here, who does a tremendous amount of work in this space, how can we take what happened and pay that forward in a way? And what do? I sit in a room with a bunch of people, I make stuff up, and then a couple months later, I sit in a big production meeting, and a bunch of very talented people are all stressed out about how they're going to figure out how to execute that. So I figure if I can write a scene where a character walks in with a gun, I can write a scene where they don't, right? And so this is a power we have, and I think it's so smart the way Brady has partnered with our industry to try to combat this. I remember after Uvalde, so many writers, showrunners, directors, even actors wrote me and our family and was like, what can we do? And this is the answer. Like, take the power you have to reshape what people see on screen and use it for that. So so that's been a focus. I think when it first happened, I had a deal with Fox 21. I think everything I pitched them was gun violence prevention related, which I'm sure really annoyed them. But and that's the thing you notice too, is that there's a lot of willingness to show gun violence on screen. There's not a lot of willingness to talk about the effects of it. And that's something I think that deserves some thinking about. But the shorter answer is, like, every moment that when I'm writing and there's the possibility that we're going to deal with guns, it's a process of analysis and make sure that, are we going to do this the right way? Are we going to be responsible? And can we help somehow?
And even the smallest modification can make a difference.
Smallest modification. I had a script right before the strike, and it was introducing a character who was a sheriff, and he's getting ready for work. And I'm just like, he just takes his gun out of the safe. That's it. It can be as simple as that. Just normalizing that thing. I, as a kid, had friends whose parents were sheriffs, and I would go over their house, and their gun would be sitting on the counter. And let's not show that. Let's show the other thing.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful. Thank you. Kris, it's hard to put into words how valuable you are and how inspiring you are. So thank you for everything that you do and all the emails that are in my inbox every day from you. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So you've spoken about the Shogun Safety Initiative as being similar to other cultural movements like anti-smoking campaigns, drunk driving, and seatbelt awareness. Those are really great touchstones. What is uniquely challenging about this initiative in what it asks of Hollywood creators as compared to those other initiatives?
Well, we're really trying to take a page from those other initiatives, which when they were first started, most people in Hollywood said that they were pretty challenging. And it turns out that with the right kind of scale and impetus, I'll use Buckle Up as an example because I myself was one of those kids that was greatly influenced by the Brady Bunch. You know, they call what happened after NHTSA, the National Traffic Highway Safety Administration, had a problem in the 1970s. And that was that while many of us growing up learning about Buckle Up, right? That was the ad campaign associated with wear your seatbelts, everyone. We learned it in school. It turned out our parents decided, you know what? I grew up driving without my seatbelt, and gee, that's kind of a pain in the butt. I'm not going to do that. But my kids will wear their seatbelts, sure. And so what happened is a huge number of kids who were in car accidents with their parents survived, and the parents didn't. And NHTSA tried to figure out how they could solve that. And what they did is they worked with the creators, producers, and showrunners of the Brady Bunch. And over a series of episodes, I think it was 2 or 3, I know because I watched every one, they showed, I think it was Jan and Greg, I'm pretty sure it was Jan and Greg, hectoring the parents to wear their seatbelts. And kids across the country, just like me, marched to their parents and said, we're not driving in the car with you anymore unless you buckle your seatbelts. And what happened after that is a huge, appreciable drop in traffic fatalities involving adults. There are people alive today because of that campaign. And so for us, yes, there are some challenges to this. Part of that is that guns in TV and movies it seem to be, from talking to so many incredible folks, actors, directors, producers, showrunners, too often, in a sense, almost a totem to raise the stakes, right? Where it's really not necessary. And so really what we have to do is ask ourselves some pretty simple questions. And Show Gun Safety is about that. Our view, and I don't think it's naive because we have a crowd here and we're getting crowds whenever we talk to people. And honestly, that the conversations so far have been amazing. Just let's ask ourselves some simple questions when we start off about what the role of a firearm is going to be. Show safe storage, which is, by the way, thinking about a law enforcement officer, for example. And too often on so many serials involving law enforcement officers, what you'll see is walk through the door, take the loaded firearm off for the day, put it by the table next to the door or on the kitchen counter, and to use kind of a trope, get a beer, right? Here's the problem with that. For most law enforcement officers, they're required as part of their obligation, their contract, to safely store their firearms. That's not just from the job that they have, that's part of the union agreement. And so when you talk to law enforcement officers across the country about that kind of portrayal, they get pretty frustrated about that. So a lot of this is actually just showing what really happens in real life across the country. And we think that sells. That sells, and it also, we think, will save a huge amount of lives.
That's so great. Thank you. So a sort of somewhat larger question, I wish we had hours and hours to debate this. Why is our legislative process in such a stalemate on this issue? And what policy solutions are needed to prevent the next mass tragedy?
Well, we don't have all night.
I know.
So I would say, look, I mean, we do have a member of Congress here, and I think he's going to be joining us afterwards, so he can talk much more eloquently than I can. Representative Swalwell, who's been a leader in the House of Representatives, thank you, on this issue. But we have made progress in Congress. We passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, what we call BISCA, right? But that's a major improvement. And I do want to say, while it can be difficult to get things passed at the federal level, there are real challenges there. Having that go through was a tremendous benefit to citizens all across this country. It provided unprecedented funding and is responsible for the first major federal rule, and Congress made this happen, to regulate the sale of firearms in this country. So I'm just gonna say one thing, in addition to going to Show Gun Safety and using your phones to do that, hopefully you already did that, the ATF has issued a rule that will be finalized for comment in early December. That rule single-handedly will potentially close the loophole in the law that allows about 1 in 5 guns sold today to be sold with no background check at all. So please, everyone here, tell your friends, you can go to Brady's website, please comment on that rule. It's so critically important. And that doesn't get discussed enough. These things that we have accomplished through huge amounts of work, these are big, big deals. So please, when people say nothing's getting done, things are getting done. We have a lot of headwinds, but we also passed a ton of laws in the states, including the great state of California. So yes, there's some headwinds. The Supreme Court doesn't always help, but we have a lot of tailwinds behind us, and that's because of so many people across the country who are lifting their voices and not taking no for an answer. So thank you for that too.
Thank you, Kris. Glen, you have a fascinating resume, as some of your shows are rooted in reality, The Shield, and others hopefully are not reality, The Walking Dead. We'll see. We'll see. What have you learned about the difficulty of balancing a creator's vision, whether it's Sean Ryan or Robert Kirkman, with these issues? Are you able to go to these people who have very clear worlds that they've described and created and say, hey, are you willing to give a little here? What have you learned on that front?
That's a great question. Thank you. I've done a lot of work in inclusion and regarding issues of race and gender and kind of, bringing more people into the writer's room. I think a lot of people here may know that. And so those were difficult conversations. When we first started having those conversations, people said, why are we having this conversation? You kind of had to justify that. And I think we've made some progress, not enough, but we've made that progress in which that conversation is normalized. I don't think we have to normalize this conversation. I don't know creators who are saying, I want to show gun violence irresponsibly. I think, Hollywood does, sometimes we go kicking and screaming when we have to modernize things that we've taken for granted, okay? If you look at how sexual assault was shown on TV even 7 years ago, 10 years ago, it was very sloppy. It was, and the audience cried out, and I think a lot of people coming up through the writer's room said, we have to do better. And then you get a show like Unbelievable, which really takes it seriously and does a good job. I think a lot of these topics that, in a way, we have to catch up to what's happening. And we're having a pandemic of gun violence. And so I think creators want their shows to be relevant. I think they want their shows to be meaningful. I mean, feel about how impacted we are after just watching that beautiful short film. I'm really shaken by watching that. So I think we know our stories make a difference. And I think that, the idea of the indiscriminate shoot 'em up kind of thing that we watched in the 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s, we've been watching it. I think that just feels stale to a degree, and if you think about how guns are portrayed on TV, a lot of it is about militarism, right? Okay, our cops are portrayed as very militaristic now. Everybody loves to write the SWAT scene where people are going through the house and that kind of stuff. And it's about authenticity. And so to just show gun owners being responsible and injuries having an impact and affecting people's lives, I think that's simply modernizing something that is out there. In a way, we have to kind of catch up to what is really happening in society. I think we have a social responsibility to do that. And I think a lot of our previous conversations have kind of set the stage. So I know we have a lot of work to do, and we can do that together, but I don't expect the pushback that we've had on other topics. I just don't. I know people have said, well, don't tell me what to write in the past. But we're just asking people to be thoughtful. I'll give an example. Okay, if I could just give an example.
I was just about to ask you to give an example.
I'll give an example. Okay, so here's something. So let's talk about where we seem to be hitting this thing about a cop coming home and locking up his gun, okay, or her gun.
Thank you for the her. That was good. Thank you.
I was not aware of this, but if you carry a gun around in states and you have that in your car, that needs to be in a lockbox in your car. Okay, so that's a metal box that's bolted onto the floor of your car. Okay, I didn't know those things existed, and I'm writing TV, so that's terrible, right? So I'm gonna write that. I hope you all write that too. That's gonna be cool. And instead of just somebody throwing a thing in a glove compartment, which is the only way. I've never seen guns stored any other way except they're left on the seat next to the tuna fish sandwich. It's either that or it's in the glove compartment. So it's not that hard to do that, and maybe somebody at home will say, "Oh, that's right. I recognize that. That's what I do. Good. I'm doing the right thing, or I got to get one of those things." So that's just very simple, you know. And there's other things we can do, but that's just a tangible thing. That's not going to screw up your show if you do that.
Well, and I also think about Vic Mackey, who was one of the first great anti-heroes after Tony Soprano, before Walter White. And it sounds like we don't have to sacrifice creating these anti-hero characters. We can actually infuse some of this safety while keeping the integrity of these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about how The Shield was, because The Shield kind of portrayed issues of corruption, police brutality, you know, so I'd have, I feel like you're asking me for a Shield pitch. I'd have to think about what is the scene.
It'll probably be rebooted any day now anyway.
It probably will, a Disney version. But
that I would love to see.
But you know what? Listen, I know Sean really well, and Sean would be into this, and I'm sure he's been mindful about how guns are portrayed on his show SWAT and stuff, and so I don't think people are. I think people want to do their part. I mean, this is a call to action for us. I mean, if you're in this room and then you don't pay attention when you leave this room, then you're part of the problem. So I think we have a call to action right here tonight.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Melinda, you have worked across a lot of different interesting genres, sci-fi and fantasy and youth programming. What unique challenges but opportunities do these genres themselves offer? Because sort of different from what Glen was describing, but are there different sort of opportunities that you can explore?
For sure. I was delighted when I was showrunning Nancy Drew and Tom Swift to be able to say to the crew and the writers, there are no guns on these shows. I have a pretty vegan approach to this. So
Did you say vegan?
Vegan, yes. Thanks. Thank you. I was able to have our writers come up with very innovative solutions over many, many, many episodes of mayhem, murder, mystery, never with a gun, never with the talk of a gunshot wound, never with a gun on set.
And these are contemporary set shows?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they would always have, discussions in the props. Like I'd say, we don't want that in the set deck. Or I would say, take that poster down, please, from the police station. Let's put something else up. I had the people carry tasers in the later episodes because it didn't feel right to me that in this small town in Maine even, we don't need firearms. There was a scene where we had a takedown of a guy in a boatyard, and there was like, discussion of whether the cops should have guns. And I said, well, if they have a flashlight, it's going to be so startling at night. The fact of this scene is that his daughter betrayed him. He's heartbroken. We don't need to threaten him physically, Right. And it was a very effective scene, and they come with their flashlights, and clearly he's got nowhere to go. So we achieved the same story point, and it was really satisfying on that level. But also, to answer your genre question, when you're dealing with magic and psychics and supernatural stuff, you don't need firearms. You've got way cooler stuff to do. And, just off the top of my head, as far as showcasing gun safety, you could have somebody who can see through walls say like, ooh, I like this person better because I see a gun safe under their bed. That's so smart. You could have a person with Obi-Wan power saying, you don't want to put your gun in an unsafe place. And they would like change their life, and it would be awesome. You could have somebody, a psychic, say, I see two versions of your future. One where your kid pulls a gun out of the drawer, and one where he's not able to. And your kid is alive in this other scenario. You can like really see the future. You can put on screen the future you want. It's a great shortcut.
I feel like you're the creator of the Shield Disney Plus.
My agent is here. And
that is so wonderful and such great examples. And, across your career and thinking about the many jobs you've had, is there a moment that you wish you had offered up another solution? Not speaking just about Lost, because that show's been raked over enough. I mean, we can't really pick it apart anymore. But was there a moment where you were in the room that today you would have made a different choice or offered a different solution?
I have offered solutions in the past, and they were respectfully listened to but not taken. So without calling out former bosses, that was one of the reasons that when I became a showrunner, I said, this is the mandate from day one. So there was that. You know, looking back on scenes that I myself wrote, had I known the things on this panel, I would have said, hey, in Women's Murder Club, when Angie Harmon finally goes to bed with her love interest, let's have a moment where she puts her gun away in a safe, and it's like part of the foreplay. You know, seriously, like, make it sexy. Let's, on Vampire Diaries, have a moment where one of our vampires who normally would hop into bed with this person and be like, oh, your gun is unsafe? I'm sorry. Check, please, you know? I think we could have done it in a way that was fun and engaging and lets people know that there's a consequence, but also like in the world that you want to see on TV, like, I want to be like that person, not like that person.
Like make it aspirational, essentially.
Exactly.
That is so great. Make it sexy. That's really what this is all about, isn't it? So we have time for a few audience questions, and I will donate my microphone to this effort, so please raise your hand if you have a question.
Hi. Congratulations on the beautiful film. And I just, you know, I was wondering, what do you think about the stories that aren't being told about the gun industry and the you know, gun shows? Are there, you know, stories about, you know, without getting, you know, too preachy, that can be told?
I think there are a lot of stories that can be told, and I'll just give you two examples, right? So you saw in the video that we have more gun dealers in the United States than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. That 5% of those gun dealers are responsible for 90% of crime guns. What does that mean? How is that contextualized? Well, it means those crime guns are driving a huge number of the homicides, typically, that we're seeing across the country. I myself get very frustrated talking to so many people across the country who are startled, shocked by that information, and who would love to see this contextualized in a different kind of way on TV and in the movies. I personally feel very, very strongly about that, in part because the way that we have categorized and told the story largely of homicide in this country is focusing almost entirely on trigger pullers. And to me, and it's just factually correct, it's highly racialized. What we don't focus on are the gun dealers profiting from that carnage, who are, frankly, 95%, because Brady has done the data, white men who live outside, far outside of the communities paying the consequences for that. So that's just one piece, and I would love if in more police procedurals, those basic facts were included, because it's factually accurate. And then you can bring in all of the other really interesting law enforcement things that could be utilized. And now that we have a good head of ATF, we're doing these things to actually shut down and reform those dealers. So that's just one example, but I know you have others.
I mean, to piggyback on that, one of the things our daughter told us that she probably wasn't supposed to tell us, was that, you know, Dettelbach, when he became the director of the ATF, went on a tour of a factory that was building AR-15s and was just overwhelmed to the point of, oh my God, there are so many guns. And how they're being sold, where they're going. A lot of them go to Mexico. You know, we talk about border issues. We're sending death down there. In our situation, and this is something we didn't know prior to our daughter Mia getting shot, she was wounded by a ghost gun. Who here knows what a ghost gun is? Okay, so a good amount. We didn't. It's a gun you can buy in a kit, and it takes about 30 or something minutes to put together, and it's a fully functioning firearm. We didn't know these existed. My brother was a cop, and he was unaware of it at the time. And luckily, because of organizations like Brady and Biden, we've made some measures to clamp down on that. But I'd talked to other people who were writers on procedurals, like, I didn't know what that was. I would have made a whole season about that. So I think part of the strength of this is taking, the wonderful data collecting that Brady does, empowering writers' rooms with it. And now we can tell those stories. We can say, hey, these guys, the gun shops, the ghost gun makers, all these, like, they're the ones killing everybody. So let's clamp down on that. It's a new brand of villain there.
Thank you. Probably just one more question. Okay, right down in front here.
This is more of a appreciation, and also I'm from the border. I grew up in Ciudad Juarez, so it is true that growing up in the most dangerous city of the world, most of the weapons come from the U.S. But I wanted to show my appreciation on speaking of intersectionality and thoughtfulness and simple decisions. The fact that you included the Spanish voices in this film was so powerful, not just because of diversity and it's the right thing to do, but because when I remember that Highland Park happened, something that I kept seeing, and it's a narrative that I'm inviting people to challenge, I kept seeing people say, this is not a place where something like this would happen, right? And that to me said, oh, this is an affluent neighborhood. And for those that grew up in dangerous places, that sends a message that says that some of us are more deserving than others of gun violence. So when you included those voices, it reminds them that those people are also part of those communities, right? And that they're important, they were also equally affected by that. So just wanted to share my appreciation. I think there's so much that we can keep doing in pushing the intersectionality and challenging some of those stereotypes and really thinking a little bit further, deeper into those.
Thank you very much. Did you want to sort of close this out before we go celebrate a little bit?
Yes. First of all, I just want to say we're so grateful to our friends at CAA for hosting us. To be able to be with you. I echo what was said. I saw the film once already, but to see it again in this theater with everyone here, because I think these things are best experienced. I mean, part of this was the communal activity of the memorial itself. I was there with Mayor Rodering 2 weeks after that shooting, and it viscerally, I'm still kind of shaking from seeing that film again, and that is the power of film. We just experienced that here, a documentary, which was so moving. But for all of us who watch TV and the movies, the power of persuasion and the opportunities to, delight, irritate, motivate, inform, all while raising the stakes and, frankly, saving lives here with all of you. This community is limitless. And while I often will get asked the question at Brady, how do you get every day and do what you do? I'm not a survivor, right? And part of the reason I do that is because Brady is survivor-led, and we have people like Fred, people like Aalayah, people like Sean with his daughter, and so many Americans across this country who are survivors, who are getting up every day. So you know what? I can get up every day too. And so can you, because we don't need to be in America where the number one killer of our kids is firearms. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your time this evening, for really thinking deeply about this, about the work that you're undertaking, whatever your role may be in the industry. You have a role to play. Brady is here to assist and help you. Obviously, Shogun Safety is the scaffolding. The rubber meets the road and the details and how the shows are put together. In the very first production meetings, we want to be of help and of use to you. And I think what we hope is looking back 3 or 5 years from now, if we do this right, we will have made a big difference in the number of people killed or injured by guns in this country. And that's worth doing. Eat and drink.
No,
Mr. Lippman,
not yet, not yet,
okay,
not yet.
he's going
not
to say a
yet,
quick
not yet.
word. Yeah.
Not yet. After Congressman speaks, then food and drink. But I'm going to introduce Congressman Swalwell is here with us. We asked Congressman Swalwell to join us tonight because if you're familiar with him, if you're not familiar with him, there are 435 members of the House. Not all of them are as fantastic as this guy. One of the reasons that he's so good, not just because he votes the way you want him to vote, because he leads the way you want him to lead, is because he knows how to communicate. He knows how to deliver a message. Not only does he know how to deliver a message, he tells the other people how to deliver a message. And so we thought it'd be very effective for him to talk about this Shogun Safety tonight. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Matt Littman and Kris Brown and the leadership team at Brady. Thank you to John Siskel for the film. Also to Kevin Huvane and Brian Lord at CAA for being so supportive and inviting us here. Fred, you're my big brother, and what you do on like the grander scale is inspirational, and what you do on the micro scale as a father is also inspirational. Something I'll never forget that Fred told me after Jamie died was he wasn't sure that day if he had told Jamie he loved her when she left the house, because it was such a flurry of things going on. And when he first met my daughter, a newborn, Fred told me, "You better tell her you love her every single day." And even this morning, Fred, when I sent 3 screaming kids out the door to school, and 2 of them that could talk were pissed off at me, I still made sure to kiss them all on the forehead and tell them I love them. And that's something you have passed on to me at that micro level. And so we're so grateful and blessed to have you in our lives and in this movement. And we're blessed to have Christy Callahan for also being an early, really initiator of this concept. And you who are here as creators, you are burdened and privileged because many victims of gun violence, and I say this as a former prosecutor who's worked with homicide victims' families, they feel helpless and they wonder, what could I have done to prevent this? What can I do to make sure this doesn't happen to another family? You are burdened because you're not helpless, because as creators, as was just described, you have the opportunity to reshape the way that we think about gun safety and the way it's displayed in TV and film. But that's also a privilege because in that opportunity, as Kris Brown said, you can save lives. I also just want to tell you, as depressing as it can be to watch a film like Memorial, a film that has to be made, we have made progress. And this movement is a movement that is making progress. The legislation that was just passed that Kris referenced, first time in 30 years we made progress. And we made progress because after a tragedy like Parkland, we saw the students and the parents pull themselves up out of unimaginable grief, and they organized and they mobilized. They created March for Our Lives. They beat 19 A-rated NRA members of Congress to change the House and to get a background check bill passed in the House and an assault weapons bill passed in the House, progress that had not been made for so long. There's still so much to do, but I hope you leave here knowing that we're going to finish the job on this, and we're going to make sure, as Aalayah and others said, enough is enough. We don't have to live this way. So thank you all again.
Thank you. And please join us upstairs. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.